both the acting chair tonight and also possibly my third time in this room doing it not fully remote. So I think it's cool, like, now that we have more members to try to like come in person. It's kind of like, we're gonna talk a little bit today about like how things used to be and the subcommittees and how they were. But yeah, so bear with me, I'm here in person. Tom is here at my side to make sure we're all good, but so I guess first we'll start with a roll call. And so I start, right, like, should I do a roll call vote for attendance?
Like, you can call the names in order, what usually done.
Oh,
You have
okay,
to know the next videos.
Okay, so Tom Omar, chair. Here,
Acting
present.
chair.
And myself, acting chair, Lena Webb, vice chair, Ted Feldman, secretary. And then we have Adrian. President, Catherine.
Present. We're changing jobs in daycare, so remote today, but we'll be back hopefully very soon.
See you. Greg, you don't have a Greg?
He's in another continent.
Okay, cool. Alex.
Here.
Sorry. Not here yet. Catherine? Here. And Paul?
Here.
Maria? Amanda. Hi, Amanda. Maria. And Mark is not here. He said he couldn't be here, and Ian is here. Cool. Now, who do we have? We have Greg, obviously, and we have.
I'll introduce myself.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lily. I just joined the mobility team about 4 weeks ago. I've been a resident of Somerville for a while, so I'm familiar about projects from our resident side, but super excited to, join the mobility team and help advance projects as a staff member. So very, very nice to meet everyone.
Awesome.
Here just kind of helping Greg out, and yeah.
Excellent, cool. And so do we have an acting secretary tonight, or is that Ted?
We do have an act. The answer is yes.
Yes-ish.
Sorry.
What is the reason for the switching of roles tonight?
Tom had a lot going on leading up to this, so I did some of the prep work prior to this, and because I'm acting secretary too, it's just nice to have Tom here, because I can learn how to do it and make sure I'm doing it right, but also have done the prep work leading up to it. There are definitely opportunities to be acting chair, or acting secretary.
I think it was actually listed as Ian. I can do that, but give me a minute because the formatting this is wrong, so I can pull it a different way.
Just shrink some, make some spaces here.
When we're going to be acting, all last month, in addition to frequently that coverage meeting this month, it's also very useful in case I can't make a meeting at all, that other people are ready to act as chair, and also kind of the chair's focus, or somewhat biases the focus of the committee. Definitely do our best to focus on everyone's interest, but like rotating chair sometimes also helps diversify what we focus on.
Is it a standard thing that it rotates every time, or just, do you want to make it that standard, or?
It changes periodically, yeah.
So like, we definitely have like a secretary rotation, so like everyone gets a chance to take minutes, in addition to Ted as formal secretary. So that's more of the, at least in our time, it's been more like, the secretary role is like a predictable rotation. But chair is sort of like pinch chairing.
Yeah.
I think we were gonna talk a little bit more about that under meeting of this.
Yes, and so again, we're now on like just procedural general business, because we are like a formal committee or an advisory committee. We need to make sure that we do the roll call votes, we do it by the book. We make quorum, etc. So I guess now that Ian is the acting secretary, we can move on to approving the meeting minutes. And I believe, did we have two?
Yes.
No. Oh, they don't show on the screen.
Yeah,
You take your time, don't worry
No,
about
just,
it.
just making sure I write down any guests that we have, and I guess Lily is a guest technically. And it looks like Kat. I think that's, she's on that board. Oh, perfect, yes.
Catherine.
Oh, I'm looking at the wrong one. Stephen and Haley, sorry, wrong Kat.
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Awesome, great.
Okay,
But we're also gonna go over like how we do submission of meeting minutes, like as part of the conversations tonight as well, so.
yeah, so I think I took them last. And put them in the box right after. Procedural question for approval of meeting minutes or any other votes, do I have to write down everyone's vote, or can we just write down approved or not?
We can just write down approved.
Okay, that's easier, thank you.
But we do have to go through the roll call, right?
We do a voice vote as needed. I know we've gone back and forth on that.
Okay.
My understanding, we can do a voice vote. Like, we will.
Okay. It's a lot of typing if I have to type everything.
Yeah.
And it's back to you.
Ish.
Answer is in August, we approved June minutes. We did not meet as a committee in July, so we only have August minutes.
And those have been submitted to Box and people have had a chance to review them.
If people have not had a chance to review,
Gotcha.
we can,
Defer until next.
sure. I think the procedure going forward that we discussed is Pernell and I will send them out prior to the meeting, agenda.
Yes, so we honestly, yeah, so we can talk about like,
That was my case.
yes, we can talk about approving these things. We can also just like formally table the approval for now until, and then again, like, we're gonna talk more about like how we're gonna do this in the future, because we got some tips from Greg and from the city about, you know, playing by the book, basically. You know, as we get bigger, as like, you know, these things, these changes keep coming to Somerville, like, you know, we are under like more scrutiny and making sure that we're like following by the books because we're like an official advisory committee. And so we're gonna talk a little bit about that, and we'll just table that for now. And then the call for any outcome, like upcoming outreach events that either the city or Paul or anybody, you know, wants to like any neighborhood bike rides or anything like that. So that's sort of like the time for this. If anyone has any sort of like community engagement, like fun stuff going on.
If you're not tired of hearing about it, we have a Halloween ride coming up in October in Assembly Square. We will be closing off a section of Assembly Square for the bikes to gather. There'll be bike to bike trick or treating. And so any group that wants to hand out candy can do so. And if they want to slip in any other flyers or any other communications, they're welcome to do so.
That's awesome. That sounds pretty big, actually.
And then we'll be riding to Medford on various Mystic River paths.
Okay, cool. Is this something that like there's data, like information to share to like the bike committee group, or something that we could like put out on our Twitter or?
Well, there's a event page, familybikeRide.org/Halloween.
Okay, cool. So we can put that in the agenda as well. So thank you so much.
I think when we last convened, it was still pending
It's
permits and
been,
approval.
the
if that's still
permits
the case.
are, it has been approved by
Cool.
Medford and Somerville.
Cool. So if there are not any more outreach events to mention,
Lena, sorry. The city has a couple of things that we want to announce.
yes.
So some of you may have seen, I think it was yesterday, that we announced the launch of a new quick build project, the Elm Beacon Connector. So no discussion necessarily needed on this now, but as you are all thinking about like subcommittees and committee events, one thing that the city is interested in, if you all are also interested in, would be the committee organizing some kind of bike ride or bike shop related to this project, similar to the walks that PTAC has routinely been doing for some of our larger projects. So just something for you to all think about and possibly consider as you're discussing subcommittees, that we think it could be really valuable to make something like this available to the public. And it would probably consist of biking the extent of the project and stopping in a few locations to talk about existing conditions and what you all might like to see. So just something to start noodling on as you're thinking about the work that you all want to do as a committee this fall. I will also pass things over to Lily now to talk about our annual bike and pedestrian counts, which are going to be kicking off pretty soon. And I know that many of you have participated in previously.
Yes, so I'm helping coordinate the program this year, and the general call has gone out for people who are first-time volunteers to RSVP for like a short training, but in about a week, I will send out a general sign-up sheet to everybody, so new people and returning sort of veterans, with the spreadsheet of all the locations and the maps and instructions for the counts, which many of you may be familiar with. But basically, if you haven't done this before, we have volunteer counts in the morning and the evening at certain intersections around the city to count bicycle and pedestrian sort of volumes. And it's been going since, I think, 2010. We have a lot of really great data. So yeah, I will be sending out an email in about a week with the sign up information. The count period will be September 24th. So the last week of September to like the first week of October. I think it's like October 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. Basically a Tuesday, Wednesday, and a Thursday morning sessions and evening sessions. So keep a lookout for that email. I'll send it out to the bike committee. I also have a list of other volunteers who have come through other channels. And if you have any questions, you can email me. I think my email has been sent to everyone, but I can certainly send it if it hasn't already. So if you know people who are interested in counting, let them know.
If anyone wants to talk about the joys of counting, please do. I think what's like 37, 38, like
It's like we have 42 locations.
42
Some of
locations.
the locations we've split into 2 counts because there's such high volume locations that it's too difficult to just, do both legs of an intersection as one count. So we try to evaluate every year whether there's changes to make it easier for people and whether there are certain things that we should be looking at. For example, this year, we are now adding like scooters as its own category because there are so many of them that it's become significant that we wanted to separate those out. And we also wanted to clarify, I think this has been true in the past, Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, but e-bikes should be counted as bikes unless they are like moped style, like motorized bicycles. So I think that's really the only changes this year.
For the most part, it'll be very similar to last year, but we, every year are making updates based on feedback we hear and try to make it clearer for everyone who's counting. And I think the past 2 years, we have managed to count every single location. So we definitely want to keep that momentum going again this year.
Yes, it's really cool too, because you can like kind of pick your favorite or least favorite intersections to go and monitor for an hour in the morning or the evening. Yeah, I've had a really good time with it. You can sign up for, as many or as, a few locations as you want. Don't get too greedy because we still have to count them all. I feel like Tom, you might have won last year's like most signed up for.
I'm up there sometimes. I forget if I came in first, but yeah, I do my counts.
There's like a gamification aspect of it. What do you say?
I know some of the new members' names I like recognize from the sign up sheet before, so I'm just curious for a show of hands of like who's participated in the bike counts before, out of curiosity.
Also, I should mention for anybody who has not done the counts before and wants and is interested, I'm running practice sessions on the Monday before the kickoff period of counting, and that information will all be in the announcement I sent out with the sign up sheet.
Are the shifts all during commuter time.
Yeah, it's, I believe it's 8, or is it 7:30 AM to 8:30 AM, I believe, in the morning. I could be slightly wrong about that. And then there's the evening, so 5 to 6 PM. So it is capturing morning and evening.
There's
Yeah,
like
there's a
some
little, yeah. Sorry.
I'm on the job. I've had to do that.
Yeah, there's a little wiggle room, like if you get to the location like a little bit late, you can start like 15 minutes past a certain time window, as long as you're counting for an hour. And all of this is made like very explicit in the instructions, so it's very clear like what can be shifted around a little and what cannot be shifted. So we do want to be consistent sort of year on year to help get like that longitudinal data.
A couple of questions. I was wondering specifically about keeping the counts consistent and comparable year over year. With the kind of splitting out scooters that I think were previously counted as bikes. I guess, have you thought about how we'll?
I usually put them in other categories.
Yeah, they were previously, that's right.
Okay, so that wouldn't be, that wouldn't change how it's compared then, I guess.
Yeah.
Are you counting motorized scooters separate from the, like, non?
We are not, we decided, yes.
Micro mobility?
Some of these things are a little tricky and we kind of like just want to look at the trends year on year before we make these decisions. But this year, our sort of consensus was that because it seems like the electric stand-up scooters are like the dominant mode, like we would lump those in with, like, if you're on one of those that's not motorized, which there are far fewer of those, like that, if that's electric or non-electric, it's a scooter, it goes in the scooter category. If it's like a one wheel, that's probably, we haven't had that yet. I would probably put that in the other category. If we're seeing a lot of those though, we will make some changes, but I think those are rare enough that they can belong in the other category.
And I also wanted to mention, I know there's a volunteer group of the Boston Cyclist Union that's been playing around with all sorts of bike related data that they can find and making visualizations and tooling based off of that. I was curious if you had any interactions with them about like seeing if the format that these counts end up in is kind of conveniently available for volunteers like that.
Great question. I'm aware of that group, but I don't know. Greg, do you know if the city had interactions with the Boston Cyclist Union's data analysis kind of volunteer group?
We have not as part of this project. We've actually been working the past couple of years pretty closely with the cities, with Somerville's Somerset office, and they have done a really good job of helping us get all of the data online publicly in the open data portal. And I think they've done some visualizations as well. I will make sure to send out that link if we haven't already. But yeah, all of the previous years count data is available publicly online at you can like break it down by bikes and pedestrians, and if you're interested in doing any of your own data analysis and visualization, that's all available there.
I was gonna ask if that was in the open data. So thank you.
And also, yeah, like definitely, oh, what was that?
Just sounds exciting. I'm in.
Yes, it's really
It is
fun. I think it's really fun. It's really fun. You definitely do get people asking you what you're doing.
Yeah.
So you'd have to be a little bit strict, be like, yes, I'm counting, so, I actually, yeah, so it's good. I mean, it's good to just tell people what you're up to. That's also a good part of it, because you're like, oh, we're actually like monitoring this stuff, we're taking data on this stuff, like for people who ask, which is cool. And if you do have like questions about, because sometimes like, you know, the sight lines that you're supposed to like count over can be like a little confusing, so like just always ask. I've done it. I have a poor directional sense, and so I really want to make sure that I'm like counting the right side of things.
Is the city also
You
doing-
learn a lot about an intersection sitting out there for an hour, even
do.
apart from the counts, just like observing everything that's happening out there. So it's a pretty, I think, interesting experience.
Online intersection is bad, but is the city doing the more, there were some places where there were kind of more detailed counts, but like demographics.
Are we still doing demographics?
We are not doing demographics. That was very hard. It was also, it kind of had some assumptions
don't
that
know,
made it,
yeah.
we don't, yeah, that's definitely, it was something done in the past, but this year we are doing kind of straightforward counting.
people make them fill out.
Cause I feel like you might miss actual counts if you're trying to assess an individual when you're like, I have no freaking clue, and then three
Yeah.
people go by
Right.
and you don't get those numbers.
Yeah.
So I think it is good to simplify it a bit. I
Right, for this-
understand why you were collecting that data, like that
Yeah.
totally made sense, but.
It
if
would
you
be
want-
great to collect that in a better way, but as a
Yes.
volunteer account, I think it made things very difficult.
Agreed. So that's good.
And,
That's,
yeah.
it'll be better this time.
For those of you who do volunteer too, let us definitely know your feedback. 'Cause again, we're always looking for ways to improve, and if you're at a location where there's way too many people, let us know. And then we can look to split that into 2 locations next year. And we've done that for a few. If you go on the sign up sheet, you'll notice there's like A, B, and those are spots where it's just too complicated or too many people for one person to count everything.
For example, one that I did, I signed up for naively, not knowing this the first time. It was Willow at Elm, and then across which is Beach. So it's basically
Yeah.
Beach coming into like Elm, turning into Willow, right? Yeah, right near the Wheelworks. So that was something where you basically had somebody on one side monitoring one sight line and someone on the other side monitoring another sight line. That was also a location where there was demographics collected, so that was a real ringer. So yeah, there's definitely places where if you wanna get accurate counts, you do need to like split it up and do that.
But that one's really important because we're gonna use those counts for this new project.
I know, we're so excited. We're gonna talk about Elm. So yeah, that's awesome. I really highly encourage everyone who hasn't done it before and everyone who is a veteran to continue to do the counts. Again, 42 around the entire city. So you guys are gonna just be like boots on the ground, wheels on the ground, pedals on the ground, whatever.
The answer to everything.
The answer to 42 locations. Okay, cool. Are there any other, so that is a very, very important upcoming outreach event. Are there any others? I think we're probably good, to move on then to our main focus. And this is gonna take some interaction with like new members too, and just like a little bit of I don't have slides or anything, but just a background of like how the subcommittees within this larger committee were organized. Did you do slides?
I did make one slide if I could share the link.
Oh my God.
I actually just the 3 of us met and we kind of did some brainstorming. So I turned what we did into a slide.
Yeah, and we can both talk to it and speak to it, because we met up just kind of thinking about it, because we had 5 subcommittees, and they were sort of catchily organized into like E's. So encouragement, education, evaluation, engineering, enforcement. So a lot of like matchy with the E words, but we also ended up with a lot of people moving away, a lot of like loss of those members, where we obviously couldn't sustain that volume of subcommittees when our general committee was shrinking. But now we are in we're getting back to it and want to make sure that we focus our energy in the most productive way possible, where people who are interested in certain subcommittees, sub actions from this larger committee can really like dive in and do what they're passionate about specifically. So we kind of met and took some notes and kind of want to also open it up to you all and kind of let you know the very basic structure we're thinking. We were like thinking triangular, but again, this is all very like up to y'all who are going to form these subcommittees with your interests, and do like a little bit of a discussion about like what it was previously. Now that we have more members, how do we want to focus our energy into subcommittees?
Yeah,
So-
a big idea behind the subcommittees too is that it's to be able to continue working on things that the committee is interested in that you don't necessarily have time to do once a month in the larger meeting. So it's really like honing in on some more of those specific topic areas. From a administrative standpoint, a subcommittee just needs to be smaller than quorum. So once a group becomes quorum or larger, then it becomes a public, needs to be a public meeting. So that's really the big consideration. Like the subcommittees can't be half, needs to be less than half of the committee.
Which is currently 6 people, 7 people.
And that's like a good spread, yeah, because if it were to become formal, then you would have to like post an agenda, you know. But that's sort of not, you know, we wanna be building on our main meeting where we're going to post that agenda, you know, kind of in between that, so. Ian,
So I know community members might be concerned that these subcommittees might go and do a lot of work that is outside the committee. But anything that's discussed there would have to come back for a vote or anything. It's basically allowing the committee to have the interested members deep dive on the topic and then bring a shortened presentation back here that we can all vote on, right? So I feel like how the congressional committee might focus on something that all Congress does not time focus on.
so for instance, like the subcommittee that has endured during our drought, our member drought, is the eval engineering subcommittee. And Ted has been the fearless leader of that through the entirety of it, or for a large part of it. So you can talk maybe a little bit about like what the eval engineering team does.
Sure. Yeah, so that we used to have like 5 different teams. We were thinking about all of the different things that we'd like to see in some of the different roles, and we wanted to fold in, you know, the great ideas that you folks came up with here and put them under headings. What we were doing in engineering and evaluation evolved a little bit, but lots of times as an advisory committee, our role is providing feedback to the city. So this is more of like the technical and engineering kind of focus. Like we look at plans for a project and provide recommendations or suggestions from, you know, what we as cyclists think, you know, would make this better or more comfortable. So if looking at like technical plans is your thing, or streetscape designs, or sometimes we make our own street views, which is kind of fun. Or you want to learn more about that, you know, think about not only what you might be interested in and maybe what you have a background in, but we also welcome people who like want to learn more about that. So part of what some of the things that we think about in taking a look at plans might be like, oh, what are like things like NACDO guidelines, which is like one of the big city and transportation guideline organizations, or like what do federal guidelines say about what this design might be, things like traffic volumes. So like how might somebody's perceived stress change depending upon like the number of cars that are on this road. So we make recommendations like that. And we also try to, in some cases, advise and suggest plans or changes to places or intersections or roads. So traditionally, one way we've done that is like there may be, you know, the city has a repaving schedule, and we know that as part of full depth road reconstruction, it's required that the city redo the sidewalks and streetscapes. So that also represents an opportunity to rethink bike infrastructure on those roads, particularly now that we have a citywide bike network plan. We can say, oh, what should we prioritize, or what would we like to see here given this plan? And, you know, I think with that, the bike network design guidance is still very much under development, and I think we can play a role with that there. So that's really more of the, you know, kind of technical thinking about streetscapes. Any questions?
Is under the new thought is the valuation engineering. Well, previously that group was also focused on like data assessments, so like,
Yeah,
if you parking utilization on a street.
yeah,
We still thinking like, that if you can, that
Sure.
group will do like parking audit or work to kind of do parking audits.
exactly. So what Alex is talking about, is that in addition to things like the pedestrian and bike count, sometimes the city will request volunteers to help, or we can offer volunteer help with things to look at like parking utilization. Because that's always a question that's gonna come up in a project, like how much are spaces on this street getting used, or you know, do most people on the street have driveways, but they're kind of not using them, and so
What was that, a parking inventory, right?
parking
A
inventory.
parking inventory,
Yes.
so in addition to just like counting how many spaces are available on a main street, looking down the side streets and also making note of both like driveways and the capacity of those driveways, so it's definitely something that like goes a little bit more, in more detail than, and at different times of day too, right? So a big important thing is like, are people parking here overnight? What is the overnight parking utilization? So in the past, we have done some counts that like were, midnight parking counts out of, the enthusiasm of our hearts. But yeah, those are all like critical data points. So the city can't be everywhere all the time. And so like, as an advisory committee, we're there to like fill in and help with that and stuff that like, in addition to the good work and the best work that, I mean, the city has, the transportation, like mobility has grown so much in terms of the staff that are on hand. So in some ways, some of the like engineering, advising that we had done in the past has now like really become much more in-house as well. So the evaluation part is also really critical because like we're going to be hearing a lot of plans like we will tonight. And that means we should go check out those spots. We should be like narrators about, how our experience biking in those places is. So there's the engineering part, which is like assessing and sort of advising on engineering, but also like, evaluating both how it is now and, how we would then see that when the proposed changes are made.
So, two examples, I know Lena and I and some other people volunteered and did counts on Powder House before some of the changes there were made.
Was that the snowstorm?
That was, I think it was either in the fall, I don't remember there being snow on the ground, but that was way before kind of the Owlette Brook, and that was way before the bike lanes.
I remember what we're talking about. Yeah.
So that's one example. The evaluation piece can also be like, okay, what might we want to tweak in this project? So for example, the Powder House Rotary is a design that actually kind of grew out of folks on this committee, working with the city. And then we did a walkthrough sometime after the markings and bollards were changed to think about what we might want to do better. So that could be part of it too, like how well did reality, match what we were thinking? What might we need to do? So again.
And that's the existing committee, the subcommittee.
Yeah.
That's the existing subcommittee. We also now have sort of the task of reinventing, basically, not even like putting back together what we had, but thinking more about, the other very important aspects of the committee that we are. And that is going, a big thing was working with Somerville Police Department. I think a lot of us have seen sort of things like, oh, should we really be focusing our like education campaign when it comes to bicycling in Somerville on handing out warnings to bicyclists or something else? And so I think that the enforcement, and was it
Well, we had
enforcement on its own? You should speak to this, Ian.
So we used to have an enforcement committee. That was back when Deputy Chief Carabino was, around. He was I'll say affectionately known as that annoying bike cop that pulls people over. What he wanted doing a lot of was pulling people over who were gratuitously running red lights, like, Beacon Street and Mossland, or Beacon Street and Washington Street. And he would basically say, look, I agree you can do that, like, it's safe, but what would your grandma say if we called her up right now? And he said, he told me, he only arrested one person because they refused to identify themselves and were a giant jerk. And he said, well, now I have to be a jerk back, but his point was trying to educate, but he was unfortunately in uniform, had to educate with a enforcement mindset. He thought that cyclists should be allowed to do an Idaho stop, but as a police officer, he couldn't really be political about that. Also, he had no power to change that. So we worked with them, we understood that aspect. We encouraged them to come up with different ways of focusing their efforts. The police department has had much turnover. I think there's a new chief.
As of very recently.
I don't know anything about him. I believe deputy chief, or the new deputy chief is now, Jim Donovan, who has worked with the committee previously. I just heard he was promoted. So we have some potential inroads there, but, a big thing that was tough with an enforcement focus committee was there's a giant gap in shared experience, or a complete lack of shared experience in a lot of the police officers and members of the committee. And it was just talking right past each other, which got really frustrating. At some point it merged with education, and we tried to do the two things together. And the police used to have, there was an officer, Marianne, I forget her last name, that used to do the bike training for third graders, I think. She retired. It all kind of fell apart. I don't know if anyone's doing it anymore, like, so. Yeah, there was a lot of potential there that just didn't really pan out, and I'll be honest, I got burned out by it because it was like, guys, like, come out and bike ride with me, and they would be like, no, it's not in the union contract. So we learned a lot, which was great. I think there's potential to do something, but I like this better where it's a subcommittee versus a subcommittee in itself, because I just don't know that there's enough to do there.
So what, some things I would add is that, we were blessed with, Steve Carabino, and that he came to our meetings.
Yes.
He was here, he sat here, he was
He-
with us
he hosted
at our
us.
meeting, yeah, he was an ex officio. Right, we used to meet in the police
It was the
office in,
only big enough
Union.
room.
Yeah.
He said, why don't you use this room? We've got this room, no one uses that night. You guys can use it, I'll be there.
So he was a tremendous ally, not just because he came to our meetings and took it seriously, but also like when he was out there doing his enforcement, he was doing it on a bike. So that point of like the behind the SUV windshield cop enforcement versus like somebody who's actually out on a bike, talking to other bicyclists, meeting them on the ground, meeting them where they are. You know, there's a big difference when it comes to having a cop on a bike talking to other cyclists versus someone in an SUV coming down on cyclists and not quite understanding like what the issues are. So just being able to have somebody that was like our ex officio member that would come to these meetings and be invested and want to learn what it's like from the bicycle experience. So in my mind, I feel like that would be something that would be really great and awesome to like try to cultivate or bring somebody in. Again, the police department is sort of like monolithic, confusing, probably not the first people we'd think that would be like gung ho about this effort. But we shouldn't make assumptions about that, and all we can.
I saw a police officer on the community path this evening on my way here. He ran a stop sign, which we should talk about, but I ran it the other way. 'Cause I
But
saw
we
him.
have the Idaho stop, right?
So, but yeah, like, there's definitely bike cops out, at least for
Right.
another month. It's gonna get cold and they're gonna stop because that kind of sucks to have your whole shit down on a bike, but, yeah, there is opportunity. I'm certainly interested. Again, I just caution that that was a committee or subcommittee that definitely led to burnout because
Right.
it was really hard to kind of say the same thing over and over and over to a monolithic department that had a lot of things going on. And that's neither good nor bad, just an observation. So, if we do that again, I would love more help.
Yes, and I feel like, again, emphasizing that prior to this, we had like 5 subcommittees. And so 6 subcommittees,
The 5 E's plus equity.
the 5, well, the equity, anyway, yeah, so that does actually just kind of stretch the members thin on definition, just because like we're trying to fill a lot of sub-Es. And so we were sort of thinking that like keeping it to 3, around that seems a little bit more manageable, because then you're gonna get like, you know, more people per subcommittee that can brainstorm together and carry out the actions. And I think like making that connection with the police department is outreach. You know, making that connection with people in the community via a newsletter, like, is outreach. Doing rides, thinking about a bike bus, you know, like an organized bike bus, stuff like that. That is outreach. And I feel like in general, the reason that these things are kind of on these lists is because we had not really had like that much of a concerted outreach effort in like the past couple of years. A lot of it was compounded by COVID. We weren't able to meet in person. We weren't able to organize large scale rides, you know, so that kind of had a drain. We also had a member drain going on at the same time. So, I think that maintaining eval and engineering and that aspect of it, and like, you know, being involved in the engineering, like in the plans and reviewing the plans and being privy to the plans is important to us as a committee, as a bicycle advisory committee. So that role is going to remain, I would hope. And the rest, the other like kind of focuses should definitely be on outreach, because that's something that we have had a drought of and need to fill that and kind of just get in that mindset. So,
2 things I would add to that. So for one, this is just like because we needed to organize thoughts on a 2D thing. So I think it's great and awesome that we have a lot of new members who brought a lot of exciting ideas. So one thing is that none of these should really exist in a silo, like the eval part, you know, it would be great to have people who actually bike in something that we change or put bike infrastructure on to tell us what they think of how it came out and do like community walkthroughs. So I could imagine that there would be a lot of interaction and overlap between however we organize things. And I didn't draw arrows or make a triangle or something, so I didn't want to go down the path of implying a hierarchy or some way of what should oversee, you know, one subcommittee to rule them well, kind of.
Not all members on all subcommittees, because then we just have
Yeah,
weekly meetings.
right. Well, not everybody can participate, you just can't all show at the same meeting. Yeah, and so the media and outreach, I put the question mark there because we weren't sure what to call it, and the things under there
Or
are.
something with an E.
Expression.
we can ditch the E's.
Yeah.
You know, it was so good. I don't know, we could put like
Is that Ken
E
Thompson's
outreach.
scream?
It is Ken screaming. We could call it E outreach. At the E
So
square.
for one question I did have on, we'll just go with outreach for the moment, media and outreach. Political outreach, is that something that we can actually do? Okay, so that's removed, we're not doing that.
The thought was, does that exclude things like if we wanted to do a bike ride with city officials?
Would that be political?
Would that be
or-
considered political
I
outreach?
think political-
Right,
To
with the
clarify,
mic.
to clarify, the committee can interact with kind of elected
Right.
officials. in their role with
So
that.
maybe.
Committee
We can't
not involved in
endorse.
Electioneering.
We can't form a, right, but we can.
We couldn't do a ride in support of a particular candidate, but like, we could,
No, we could certainly-
no, I'm saying we can't do that, but we could like go on a ride with the mayor to like show parts of Somerville that were like, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we could certainly do that.
Yeah.
So
Elected official outreach,
So
so
it's
it's maybe the better.
Yeah.
elected
Political.
prior, like, elected is fine, elections are not.
Correct.
Okay.
Is there any
Putting that
outreach
down.
examples other than coming on rides?
Elected?
So would it be fair to say that like, as a committee, we also will draft and sign onto letters that like support a particular project to the public?
Sure.
Like, does not necessarily, we write it to a particular council member or the council or even like to the mayor. This is basically through this committee, we endorse plans that have come before us and, you know, even if we, you know, have changes too, or like we support this, but we would like to see blank.
So. two
Yeah.
Examples. So for instance, the city applied for federal grant funding for part of the McGrath project or to subsidize part of the McGrath project. We wrote a letter in support of their federal grant applications. That's one example. The city of Arlington got in touch with us after a cyclist was killed. Actually, a Somerville resident a couple years ago was killed biking in Arlington. They wanted to make some changes on the road. We wrote a letter in support of their proposed, yeah, that happened.
That's
We-
Appleton.
Yes, the Appleton, so the that's right, the Appleton Mass Ave infrastructure was because somebody was killed there.
Relatedly, that this could involve kind of meeting with city councilors, make sure that they're aware of what the committee priorities are. Making sure that we're hearing from councilors, as they certainly become the constituent outreach. Hearing like this intersection is particularly dangerous, or like, I don't understand why the city designed it this way, or things like that, and having the opportunity for us to hear that. And to help make sure that councilors are kind of like well informed of like why a particular safety change might be important.
Yes, we're not off limits, like we definitely are here to like also communicate with our electeds, but. Endorsing particular electeds is obviously not, we are, you know, city appointed advisory committee, that's our role, not.
Stay out of elections, or stay out of local elections, all elections, yeah.
Policy is not politics.
Yep.
So I think,
Did you have,
yeah, the only other one I was gonna mention was actually the walkthroughs. So like 2 years ago, we walked through Western Washington, proposed changes. To walk through of residents, people using, it was kind of us and PTAC together, walking through the improvements that we saw from pedestrian, transit and bicycle perspective. And I think we can do a lot more of that. The other one we've done in the past is, when parking was repurposed, the city councilor is asked to weigh in, the ward councilor is asked to weigh in. And so getting buy-in very explicitly, especially when there may be opposition to doing something different in that corridor. And that's been totally, I still believe it's still totally fine.
You put that under outreach.
Yeah, I put that under outreach.
And then newsletter and social media, so we had an annual like newsletter that we would distribute as a digital PDF. We haven't done that in a few years. And the social media, we have accounts for everything, and we find that like it's a role in and of itself to kind of coordinate and publicize everything that everybody else is doing.
so I would say like the media outreach thing is something that no subcommittee touched, no prior E touched. And yet we did have a newsletter, writing that, collecting the info for that, you know, collecting things that would be a worthy update. That's a lot of work. Posting on our Twitter, posting on our non-existent Instagram, you know, making sure that like what we're doing is actually being broadcast to the community is huge. And it really wasn't something that was happening beyond the newsletter, which was great. Again, that was a lot of work to put on one person. And so when we were having our discussion, it kind of felt like an actual media group that wants to be passionate about drafting the newsletter, being the person that's going to post pictures and, you know, understand what, you know, we can and should post on our Instagram or on our Twitter. We do have a Twitter, we sort of have an Instagram, but these are all things that I have absolutely run fallow that, you know, are definitely critical when it comes to encouragement and outreach, like in general. Like, you know, it's very important to get people encouraged to come to these rides, come to these counts, bike count, the city bike counts. That all has to be publicized via outreach. So I think that was something we were always weak at. Even when we had 5 to 6 subcommittees. That was something that was generalized between them, and those committees were already very busy with like the technical details that were going into that. And, you know, maintaining a Twitter, writing a newsletter. I wrote the newsletter for a while. I liked it. It was really cool, but it was a lot of pressure.
Kind of have a tradition, if you're gonna take that role, you have to be good at bad puns and. parent
I
level
can
things.
help with that. But yeah, so just basically like having a subcommittee kind of focused on that and wondering, and this is something, again, when we have like our new members in front of us, like, we want to hear what you would like to contribute and like, what do you feel strongly about? Like, would you love to like be in charge of the bike committee's Twitter and like put out beautiful pictures of like the new powder house in Alewife Brook? Or, you know, and it's not just you getting those pictures, it's like us all on the committee should be taking those pictures when we see a beautiful new green painted bike lane on Willow, or like a refresh, you know, like just stop and take a picture. And then like, you know, depending on how we want to see that outreach group grow, there could be a folder where we simply just put all our wonderful community bike pictures in, and then that makes it a repository, it makes it easier for people to post on social media to get people excited. You know, for instance, what we're all excited about that we will hear about at some point soon, Elm Street, or, you know, what's happening on Summer Street, or what happened at Powder House in Alewife Brook. Like, that was a tremendous project, that a really, really transformative project that took place over a very short period of time. And I was a little disappointed, honestly, that more people didn't know about it. In fact, like, I mentioned it at a bike committee meeting, I feel like 3 months ago. What's that?
It's not done yet. There's no bike signals. And I've gotten, I live right there, and I've had parents with kids be like, what the hell? I'm like, not done yet. So,
There may, okay, that's.
Well, we haven't said
That's a sub thing, but yeah.
Lena,
Yes.
if it's all right, I'd like to ask our guest
Please do.
Era to weigh in, who previously was a super volunteer with Encouragement Education Mobility.
I have
Could you
no idea.
sponsor Era to speak, if that's possible? And then after that, perhaps we could go around and ask members to kind of respond, like, does this resonate with you? Does it cover something you're interested in? Do you know what you might be interested in joining?
Can we leave something off?
Go ahead, Era. I think you can speak now.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Great. Well, I think you've covered a lot of what the old committee used to, a subcommittee used to do. It was called the Education and Encouragement Committee. And it was quite robust for a while, a lot of work organizing rides. And I know a couple of new committee members that have a lot of experience with that. The one thing that we did that's not listed here is education. So we created and distributed a lot of little business cards with tips, flyers that got handed out at the bike breakfast. We even filmed a how-to bike box video. The idea was to run it on Somerville Community TV. So there was definitely an education component. And actually we worked with the Somerville Police and one of the schools to restart the 5th grade bike education program. We got all the bikes fixed up that are sitting in a storage room, and then COVID hit. So I think that, that was a good match to have both of those responsibilities within one committee. And I've handed off the notes to a couple of people, but I can share that with you, Tom and Lena, so that you have it.
And also, now that you mentioned that, it reminds me of the excellent Stop on the Line Every Time campaign. So it could also be like information blitzes to like drivers and whatnot, being like, hey, like, please stop before the bike box, here's a handy flyer. So I don't know if you've seen, I know Cambridge has put out sort of like streetwise, like how to like be on the streets, whatever, and like, avoid right hook, with like these nice, very clear graphics about how to like, arrange yourself on the street, whatever. And so like Stop on the Line Every Time, kind of like catchy, like campaigns that could educate drivers, can educate cyclists, and just have that be part of like the education component. It's good that Eric brought that up, because that was the other half of the encouragement committee.
We used to stuff flyers into the parking permit mailers. I think that's out.
Well, that's what Cambridge did too. Yeah, so again, outreach, so these things are like definitely critical. Like, basically, these are like. Like the encouragement subcommittee already existed and was incredibly important and also stretched incredibly thin. Now that we have more members, the encouragement subcommittee, like, look, we've already got what, like 7 to 8 sub bullets there. And then I think just like the media and outreach, something is something we didn't have before. And so that could be something that like new members we can talk about, and if that resonates with you, and so maybe then we can turn it yeah, to members, new members, new members. Don't want to put them on the spot. We've talked enough, though.
Exactly.
We're old. Old and tired.
I like the encouragement one. I feel like, I mean, I don't know if we're supposed to be volunteering right now for any of these, but something that used to happen where I used to live was like coffee talks. And so people would meet up at like a coffee shop off the bike lane. So I don't know, I don't really know exactly where would be the best spot, but there's plenty that are close by, and it was just like, kind of like office hours, you know, come and talk, and maybe you could do it around, like different genders or ethnicities or something that would be like calling to people outside of just bike talk, but we could also just start it with bike talk since we don't have that yet, or coffee chats or whatever we want to call it. But I found that was fun way to like meet other people who like to bike, and, you know, you're on your way to work or on your way home from work, something like that. It's a social event, but also could talk about what's happening in the city.
I feel like didn't I feel like Kevin met early at Forge. I feel like Kevin,
That was the enforcement committee.
the enforcement committee was,
30 at Forge.
yeah, so we definitely have pulled up in Forge on Somerville Ave before, so yes, coffee talks.
But you can see us. So.
Forge was a popular option. Different ones, like,
Yeah, Adrian, we're thinking of that as kind of like an outreach event of like, oh, like anybody out there who wants to learn more about like biking and why things are this way.
Yeah, just like a social aspect of it too, like connect people about biking, or like hear any issues people see on their path to work. And it wasn't necessarily like put a table on the street and call people in to
So it's like
come.
office
was like-
hours?
Yeah, it's kind of like office hours, and it would be, but it was planned. It's not like come off the street. It's like come to the coffee shop, get your coffee, come chat, and then go to work.
The planned aspect makes a big difference, because we tried more of these tabling events, and it's tough because everyone's in a rush to get to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta bring your materials and whatnot, and flyers and.
Gotta get pre-caffeinated to break, you know, about whatever your earliest from is.
No, I like the office hour,
it's a cool idea.
pitch, yep. Anyone else?
Again, share my opinion. I think these are good. I love titling it encouragement. I think that is so much more optimistic than education, even though it is education. Encouragement is so fun and true, right? Like a lot of people, if they started biking, would know enough. Just they just did the boost. As far as my personal involvement in what I can see myself doing, I have a lot of experience with most things that are in the encouragement box, which is why I would rather not be on that committee, because I've done a good amount of that. I'm really interested in engineering and eval. I have a good amount of experience like writing comment letters and that kind of thing, but not necessarily on planning documents. I would love to know more about like the really nerdy nitty gritty of that.
You
So,
got that?
yeah, that's interesting to me. And as far as the media and outreach, my only touch of concern is that I know through this committee that the city has a slew of rockin' newsletters that I wouldn't want to duplicate. You know, I would make sure that whatever we're putting out on any platform is additive or, you know, amplifying what the city is already, like, they're making graphics left and right, they're putting out maps, you know, just to share what it is.
So expanding on that, the city used to not have any support. It's basically like Mike Tremblay. And it's now a massive department which has lots of specialties, such as newsletters. Is there any ability to have help with like a media outreach newsletter aspect from city departments? That might be a big ask today, but you know,
It'd be something
tomorrow.
for the
Well,
subcommittee. The
yeah.
subcommittee could figure out what exists and what makes sense to combine.
On that, Ian, and yes, and, is there a gap that your newsletter can't fill that ours should? Like, you know, if you, like, your newsletter is great, it's awesome, I loved it, I got it, what, today, yesterday? Yeah, we got it. So yeah, from the city, feedback from the city as well, like if SBAC were to do a newsletter, what would be helpful for you for that to look like? Or do you feel like it's completely not worth our time?
Or should we
Or should we,
write a
yes,
segment as part of your newsletter?
Um,
I mean, oh,
so
go ahead.
the city newsletter is very focused on sharing updates on projects and programs that the city is working on. So I think that if the committee, you know, looking at this middle encouragement group, if you are trying to bolster like educational materials that you are creating or working on organizing a bike bus or a ride, like those are types of things that would not be captured in the newsletter. So any kind of committee work would not be in the city's newsletter. So I think that would be a valuable way to share what the committee is working on.
I read the PTAC newsletter. I think it's monthly.
Mhm.
And they have some overlap with mobilities information. They post their own letters. But they also just remind people they have meetings and to come to them. And it's just like, I mean, I guess you can make it like less work by making the scope kind of more formulaic and easy to just get out there, however often you want it to be.
I feel like this subject would be good for this committee, for the media outreach to do this delving, right? Like I would feel trusting of that subcommittee to figure out what's needed.
I think the piece that I'm hearing too is that yeah, a separate newsletter might be worthwhile if there was a certain threshold of events that we were planning on our own
That's true.
that are distinct from kind of the OSPCD focus or ETAC focus.
Right, I think they're like thinking about the PTAC one, I think like there's a lot of value in like the analytics that they spend some time doing that's not covered in the mobility content, that I think if we hit a critical mass of activities for this committee, that then there's a lot of value for that, especially as we're trying to either push various projects forward or push various, you know, initiatives like things that are not associated with mobility, like rides. One area that I think we've been particularly bad at is trying to build partnerships. So like for one example is last year we did a joint ride with Somerville Community Access TV, but they wanted somebody to come, they wanted kind of quick bike repair, learn basic bike repair, and then this ride out from Union to Davis. And that worked really well, but I think there's a lot more that we haven't kind of uncovered in that space.
So it sounds kind of like, again, you know, with mobility having the amazing staff and everything that they have now, a newsletter, you know, rather than replicating what mobility is able to tell us and tells us in such a cool way, is like, again, back to the more outreach aspect. And that's what the PTAC does. And that's what we have been lacking on for many years, but also like, if we wanted to do a newsletter, possibly like a cool thing to do would be to look at what the mobility newsletter is and then say, okay, they're saying we're gonna have this cool thing on Elm. How about we organize a site walk or site ride rather, and then we put that in our newsletter to say, come do this, you know, and we can reference the city's excellent newsletter as well. So
Basically focus on
Outreach.
outreach and encouragement.
Yeah.
On city projects, but it's off of city projects. and what we can do.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also we're not going to give up the, like, we're not going to be an advisory committee, because like that is the A and S bag, right? And so like, yes, it's awesome that like mobility has grown and all of that, but like our feedback is still really valuable, and that's why this committee exists. So we can't forget that. And, you know, we will submit our advice. And hopefully doing so with a more, like, with a well-rounded sort of like, with outreach, bringing back that outreach, soliciting that outreach from the bicycle community that we are basically being ambassadors for, and communicating that back to you guys, right? Like, that to me, to the city, sorry, to y'all. Does that seem to be a way in which both we can honor our advisory role and really bring in and bolster that encouragement part?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely not, we are not going to be looking to scale back on reviewing plans and asking for your thoughts on the like engineering side of things. So that's going to continue. I think as you, Lena, have been talking about, and everyone, just having more people on the committee now, there's a bit more of an opportunity to branch out and tackle some of these other interests that maybe the smaller group just didn't have the capacity to do. So yeah, definitely not looking to change what the committee is, but I think, you know, you now have an opportunity to think, all right, what can we do beyond some of the things that we've already been doing?
Correct. Cool.
Kat has a hand up.
Yeah. Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Great. I wanted to do a quick time check. So recognizing we've got about 15 minutes left, I think this has been a really helpful conversation of framing the work that this committee has done in the past to help us think about what we want to do going forward. What is the recommendation for how we essentially move this conversation forward and start having everyone then engage in the various committees? Because I think there have been different great threads of conversations, but I think it seems like the committees will be the best place to actually figure out what is their Instagram plan? Like, who's going to run this? Because I think a lot of this is, let's just go do it, right? Let's just go do it. And we don't need to do analysis paralysis. Not saying anyone's doing this, but want to say, how do we, I feel very energized and would love to like actually go do this and try to figure out what is our process for going forward.
So it sounds like one thing is we usually have regular meeting schedules for each of the subcommittees.
Correct.
So I think one key action item would be getting people to coalesce at meetings to go over these things and figuring out who might want to spearhead a particular project or spearhead the subcommittee. I could say that I've been doing that with engineering and evaluation. We usually meet the last Thursday of every month, sort of getting ready for the next full SBAC meeting. So yeah, as long as we don't all pick the same time, I think that's.
Yes, and sorry, are you,
Or we could
I didn't
all
mean to-
at the same time, because we're not supposed to be on the same committees, right?
We could.
so,
Okay.
It's not the same place.
Just say.
Okay.
Someplace, not.
yes, I just want to say too, that this is like the first meeting that we're talking about this and bringing it down even into these three, and we really want to let new members know how it was before. So that is this meeting. And now that we have these, you know, options in front of us, and I think we've all had time this meeting to weigh in kind of on our general feelings, like this work is going to continue. And so just kind of seeing how we've laid it out, hearing feedback from folks tonight. I think that's a great start to this. And you're right, time check, we do want to save time for the city update. And so.
I have a question, before we move on, if I can.
Sure, I'm just like, did you see this, like, y'all, did you see this, like, having some sort of like tonight, a definitive decision that like we would make, or should we plan further?
Yeah, I guess my take is
Yeah.
mostly hearing, from members like, do these groupings overall make sense? Are there like things you're very interested in that aren't captured here? So would love to hear from Amanda to that effect. And then maybe as a follow-up, I'll send an email kind of like, ask each member to, I suppose, to respond like, I definitely want to do this, I would be up for this other one. And then, you know, turns out everybody's in one group, you can certainly cross line differently, et cetera.
And then it goes on to seeing who's, you know, what times work for people. So, you know, this is sort of like, yes, energy. I love it. I'm feeling it. And this is such a good first step.
I guess I see a lot of, overlap, as we were talking earlier, between encouragement, media, and outreach. Like, for me, I'm like very interested in like school-focused things. And, along those lines, I'm curious, how do we know about where those bikes are? And how do you resurrect, say, I'm like, my kid was like very much left behind with like COVID and being in school, and a lot of kids were. And so I would like very much to like, not only get it back to where it was, but do better as far as getting kids access to bikes and encouraging and helping them figure out how to get to school on bikes and stuff like that. But clearly there's like stuff out there and knowledge, but like, how do we
So
access it?
this might be a good moment for a brief logistical digression. So Tom, if you can pull up, you're sharing your screen, which is the easiest, but I think you've all been given or will get access to our box accounts.
It's all in there?
So a lot of things that we've done in the past are in there, but it would be great to add new things to said box. I don't think 100% of everything is in there, but for instance, that is where we share like our acting secretary roster, which I will add you to. And that is where one place where, that's where we collectively save like minutes and agendas from our meetings. So the first,
In content and things used for the
Well, I think there's also a question of, like, someone in the city was doing this that was not the committee. The city was never involved with the schools much, as much as we tried. Is there anyone in the city, in like the city proper or the school department that is doing this that we should reach out to? Who do we contact? We just call up, the superintendent and say, hey, bikes, great. Like, that's probably not gonna go anywhere. We can't go to every principal and get the same response. So like, maybe that's a point where the city staff could come and work their inner city magic that we don't know about and say, you two people go talk, go get coffee. I think that's kind of a.
Yeah, I mean,
the
like,
question.
who to go to, and
Yeah.
is there a city?
I asked this in the past and it kind of petered out, but that police officer who was doing it was retiring, so it kind of made sense, but. So not to be on the spot, but.
No, that's fabulous that you asked this. Actually, I think I'm gonna ask Greg to speak a little bit more to this because he's more familiar with this, but we do have a sort of group that is focused on safe routes to school topics and we have representatives from the schools, from mobility. I'm sure I'm missing people, but I guess what I'm saying is that seems to be a conversation that the city is trying to have. Greg, do you mind filling in a little more details? I went to one of their meetings as a new staff member. I'm very excited about potential stuff happening there, so I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, I would say that if you are interested in doing anything related to schools or bike education in schools or bike buses, that mobility would be the place to start. And we have connections with Somerville Public Schools and with other OSPCD teams. We would love to help support you all in building out your connections with the school communities. So if that's something that the committee is interested in doing more work on, we definitely would support that and happy to make any connections there.
so it sounds like the middle level is also, you could like send an email to everybody in the committee, you could email us or anybody who's been here a while, and or also copy the city. Find the connections.
And so, to Kat's point, we do want to make sure to have time for the city update. And it's a good question, what's the next steps for this, right? And so this is sort of, again, just a very like preliminary layout of our sketch. So it's definitely not like, okay, here's encouragement. You can sign up for this slot. You know, we definitely want to still be collecting like people's ideas and also like what people bring, you know, what connections do people bring? What like enthusiasms do people bring? Like what looks good? And my question, I guess, leading into this is like, can we have free conversations about that as a committee that we don't have to worry about? Like, could we have free like email conversations about organizing how we want to organize our subcommittee without it being a quorum issue? Or,
No, you
like-
cannot email as a committee
so we
outside.
would have to meet like in person to like,
It would have to be a full meeting to set up the subcommittees properly. What
So
I think we could do is perhaps the executive board could set up a Google form or something to collect feedback.
yeah,
And then next week, or not next week, next month, we could come back and formally vote on perhaps these three committees if members provide unidirectional feedback of another committee, it can be presented.
okay,
And that way we can all kind of just think about it. If anyone has interest in sharing one or more sub or subcommittees, directionally feedback that to the executive committee.
yes.
And then, they can collect everything and we put out a summary of the collected material a day or two before the meeting for October, so we can all digest them again and then come and vote and move forward in October. And we've got all winter, which is a quiet time to go and figure this out. Does that sound
That sounds
Yeah.
good.
okay, Greg?
I'm not sure I caught all of that, but
Or
I
just-
think
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, we'll just I'll push all our ideas to the executive committee, they'll collect and collate, and then we'll come back next month and vote on actually setting this all up.
Yes,
Yep,
because
I think-
to Kat's point too, like, there are some, you know, we need to follow formalities as well when we set this up, so, again. It can be like a little frustrating just because there is energy and like we're all here and we're seeing this right now, but there is also like, so we have to make sure we're doing it the right way. We have to make sure we're not doing it in a group big enough to constitute some other thing. And so, yeah, just the fact that we, you know, kind of start this conversation and as Ian said, you know, be mindful about how we like feed that information back to the rest of the committee so that we can like, you know, solicit, well, like, what do you know, what would you be specifically passionate about? Like, do you have connections where you're like, oh, yes, I know, you know, this and like, I'm super excited to get, you know, their bike ride that I know about, like on the map or something. But just like still having to be careful about like talking about it in a group so that it doesn't become something that needs to have an agenda posted 48 hours in advance.
So I'm basically just putting this down as like an action for the committee.
Cool.
All of us are just going forward, all of our ideas to the executive committee. Raise your hands if anyone's not familiar with it. And, if you have any interest in running anything, let them know, and then you guys will collate it and send it all out like in 40 hours for the next meeting, and then we can go and
Yep.
converse
I
and all
think
that.
we converged to what we were thinking about beforehand, which was an anonymous, like Google form that anybody.
Yeah, because that way it's not deliberations or anything like that, it's just throwing ideas to
Yeah,
someone to
right.
collate and turn into something that not talk about in 2 hours. Hour and a half.
Hour and a half. If we keep going. Okay,
Great.
cool. Does that sound good for now?
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, and I would say think about, you know, for next meeting, I know we talked about a lot of specific things that could be a part of each of these subgroups. But also think about like generally which of these groups seem to resonate with you. I think someone mentioned that like, you know, especially under that encouragement group, there were a lot of things and we don't necessarily expect like that you're going to be able to do everything. And once you form the groups, you'll figure out, all right, what are the things that we're really interested in and what do we want to focus on? So don't get overwhelmed by like the amount of things that you could do, but think about like, all right, this group of things is generally interesting to me.
Like, one thing you would like to see happen in 2025. that you might be interested in.
Great. All right. City update. I can probably run through this pretty quickly so that we can end as close to 8 as possible. Speaking of outreach and engagement, we've got some exciting things coming up. the aforementioned Elm Beacon Connector quick build project. The first community meeting for that project is September 25th. That'll be a virtual meeting. Mobility will also be holding a street pop-up event on October 3rd, with October 16th as the backup date.
Greg, are you sharing slides for this or?
No, I should be, but I'm not. Too many buttons to press. Okay. Is that you see now?
There we go.
There we go.
Yep.
So yeah, the Elm Beacon project that I just mentioned, also announced in the newsletter yesterday was the Western Pearl reconstruction project. So that is kicking off not long after Elm Beacon on October 9th, and similarly we'll have a street pop-up, and that project is our annual Complete Streets project, so in the same vein as Tough Street and West Broadway that are progressing in their design. So Western Pearl is the next iteration of our Complete Streets project. And then we have a couple of general tabling outreach events coming up: Gilman Square Arts Festival and Summer Streets Monster Mash in October, which PTAC will be tabling at. So if there's any interest from members of the committee in joining for that event, we definitely would invite SBAC participation.
Greg, really quick, just to cut in, like, this is something to do, even if like community meetings, public meetings, just go to them. Like as an SBAC member, or even just as a community member, but especially as an SBAC member, if you see these opportunities just to come to a public meeting, come sit in an elementary school cafeteria and watch the slideshow, you're gonna hear what the community members have to say about it. And then you have more information as a community member as well. So simply just attending these meetings is a very important part of being a part of SBAC. And it's easy because they're already events. And you just go and you listen.
Yeah, and the pop-ups in particular can be really fun and really cool to get outside, and you are able to talk to and reach people who wouldn't typically come to your traditional community meeting. So we've had some really good conversations, and you can see in this photo some committee participation in our pop-ups and open houses. Some quick updates on our ongoing projects. So this slide has updates on some of the major infrastructure projects that are going on right now in the city. The Alewife Brook Parkway Powder House project is continuing, almost complete there, just working on some final punch list items. But if you haven't been out there yet, that project is mostly done. Very exciting. Spring Hill continues. There's work on Summer Street. Final paving is being scheduled. Photo on the right here shows the work that's going on with the new protected bike lane cycle track and some of the stormwater infrastructure that's being added as part of that project. In terms of statewide or state managed projects, really just continuing on, no major updates for these three projects. McGrath resurfacing is getting close to completion in terms of installing the separation for bikes. So that will be very exciting once that's finally in. And then the bridge and McGrath Boulevard projects are, I don't think any updates from last month. On our Complete Streets projects, two that are in construction, Davis Square, again, getting close to finishing. The final striping and mill and pave are planned for late this year. Western Washington, continuing to progress, still on schedule to be completed later this year. the photo on the right is showing one of the new floating bus stops that was recently constructed. So super excited for those to be functioning.
Quick
And
question
then-
on Washington, if we have a second.
Yeah.
There is absolute chaos on Western Washington right now during construction. Cars are driving all over the place, excavators swinging all over the place, and kids trying to get to school, mine and Alex's. Can we get Somerville police or construction crews to actually flag? Because it is absolute chaos. It's actively unsafe and it's right in front of the school. I emailed construction at Somerville, ma.gov, and got a very milquetoast response back saying, well, we're working on it. And that's just not acceptable.
So just to be specific, it's not right in front of the school, it's like adjacent to, yeah. Just,
It was, I think it's now moved.
yeah, it's closer toward kind of, I forgot what the cross street, what's,
Between Dane Street and.
yeah, between Dane Street and Argenziano.
It's like one of the two ways to get to the school. So,
Detail.
yeah, can we get a construction detail there? I don't know who else to ask, so that's why I'm being a pain about it right now. I know you can't answer that right now, but I don't know what else to do other than get run over by an excavator.
Yeah, no, that's thanks for bringing that up. And yeah, we can certainly take back that observation and see what we might be able to do out there. Yeah, I don't right now have a better answer for you, but
That's fair, thank you.
and then Tough Street and West Broadway. No updates on either of those from last month. Tough Street wrapped up the community engagement period over the summer, and so we're in the process of reviewing all the feedback and finalizing those plans, which will be coming out later this fall. West Broadway, we will have another upcoming round of engagement later this fall with another iteration of the plans, and we will be coming to chat with you all about those sometime this fall. And that project is just a little bit behind Tufts in terms of schedule, so probably late this year, early next year is when we're hoping to finalize those designs. Lastly, a couple of other project updates. The Glen Street, Otis Street neighborways are largely have largely been implemented. There were a lot of elements that were put in August, and we're currently underway with the paint and symbols. The bottom photo there is new green that has gone in at Glen and Oliver Street, and I believe some of the other gateway treatments have the same green now too. So, but that's continuing, should be completed soon. We also have newly installed green paint at the Walnut on the Walnut Street two-way facility at Gilman Street. Tough Street mural that we talked about last month has now been installed, so that's very exciting. And then community path lighting. Again, the construction documentation is complete and just waiting to go out to bid on that. Those are our city updates.
Greg, on the Spring Hill sewer, is the city still expecting to have whatever we're planning on doing for the streetscape on Highland for 2026 still? Like, is that still the current plan?
I am not aware of any schedule changes, so I haven't heard of any changes. So if that is what has been announced, I would assume that that is still the plan.
Yeah, this is what was announced to city council in like 2022. With repaving in 2024, which is happening, and then with no streetscape planned until 2026. So I want to make sure that that's still kind of what the.
Are you talking like a larger Highland Ave redesign?
Right. So today there's no markings on Highland, right? There's no bike lane, there's no anything. And the idea was that it was going to be a waste of, it was not the best use of resources to put something on if we're going to repave over it immediately, so I'm trying, maybe that would be a useful update for us to get at some point.
So, yeah, so as of now, there's no like planned timeline for a Highland Ave redesign. I know that it's something that continues to be discussed, but I as far as I know, there isn't like a concrete date set for when that project is happening.
Right.
Okay, cool. That's the city updates. And any comment, open it up to any comment from, further comment from committee members. And, yeah, if not, I think we could,
Is there not public comment that happens?
are there any public here? Other than Era? Did we have, I can't see, I honestly can't see anything.
Yeah, we can open it up for public comment if there's anybody who.
Yeah.
All right, I'm not seeing anything come through on my end, so I think we're all good
All
there.
right, cool. Well, I think this is productive. Lots to think about what you want to do. And yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be fun. So, I guess with that, we can adjourn. Do we have to do like a formal roll call vote so that we're not stuck here forever, or we can just adjourn?
We can adjourn.
All right, let's adjourn
everyone.
then. Awesome. Thanks, you guys.
a good night.
Cheers. Thanks so much, Greg. Feel better, okay?
Feel better.
Thank you. Yeah, I will see you all. Well,
At one of our
Yeah.
outreach events.
yeah, hopefully.
Cool. Thanks.